found when researching Elizabeth Warren and her call for the economic crash that will potentially happen in 2020 or as late as 2021. So let's get into it. Brace yourselves. The American economy is about to crash. For a while now, the media has been peddling the message that the economy is doing well, things are on the up and up, but a deep dive into the American economic motors reveals quite the opposite. While we continue to ride the coattails of Obama's economic policies, 80% of that being Obama's administration, Trump has made good work of eroding that economic security. Trump and hot button issues consumed the Democratic presidential candidates at the time, and there is at least one presidential candidate who is sounding the alarms on this coming crisis. On Monday, July 22nd, Senator Elizabeth Warren issued an essay called "The Coming Economic Crash and How to Stop It." She put this on Medium, and I guess a good question is, why listen? Why listen to Warren's calls for this potential crash? Well, in her essay she published on Medium, Senator Warren states that I see a manufacturing sector in recess. I see a precarious economy that is built on debt, both household debt and corporate debt. So household debt and corporate debt are the two primary offenders, and they're both vulnerable to shocks. She says, I see a number of serious shocks on the horizon that could cause our economy's shaky foundation to crumble. Well, in 2003, it was Warren that published the book, The Two Income Trap. Why middle-class mothers and fathers are going broke. She published this with her daughter, Amelia Warren Tyagi. In chapter 6 of that book, entitled The Cement Life Raft, Warren warned us of the then looming economic crisis. You know, this is the same woman who accurately predicted the financial crisis of 2008, 5 years prior in 2003. And she is once more pointing us to the red flags with this new essay that came out last Monday. So, what is she speaking to? The writing is on the walls. Warren looks to the American debt, specifically corporate and household debt. First, she looks to the student loan debt. Warren identifies that the student loan debt has more than doubled since the financial crisis of 2008. She gives the numbers that it's 1.5, but I've seen elsewhere where we're looking at roughly 1.4 trillion in American student loans. And these students are borrowing more than ever. She additionally points to credit card debt that matches its peak in 2008. Plus, she talks about auto loan debt, which is at its all-time high since Warren began tracking it 20 years prior. And to top it off, there is a record-setting 7 million Americans that are behind on their auto loan debt. When you look at these auto loans, much as Warren did, you can see many of these remind you of pre-crash subprime mortgages. According to Urban Institute, 30% of this is a survey done by Urban Institute. 30% of adults in our country already have debts in collection. In other words, these 71 million Americans are struggling to or unable to make the payments necessary to fulfill their obligations on the loans, and yet the corporations are still generating these loans for folks. So it isn't only household debt that exists today too. We should also look at, as Warren did in her essay, corporate debt. It is going to be a major contributor to the coming economic crash, a term that we should familiarize ourselves with and may become very accustomed to hearing in the near future is leveraged corporate lending. That's LCLs. And LCLs are about to tank our economy, and Warren identifies that since Trump took office, lending to companies that already are seriously in debt has skyrocketed. And if we haven't learned anything yet, it's that this is a bad practice. Since Trump took office, that number of LCLs has jumped 40%. Using the phrase from the former Fed chair Janet Yellen, when she raised the red flags about our economy, coming to the Financial Times in October 2018, Warren identifies with her term that this is a spreading systemic risk throughout our financial system. Warren isn't the only one either, though. Experts across the nation are getting spooked by this type of lending in our fractured system. The National Association for Business Economics conducted a survey in February 2019 with 300 business economists, and 3/4 of them expect for us to be in a recession by the end of 2021. More than half of them think that recession could come as soon as 2020 or the end of 2020. But anyway, high-risk loans now make up 25% of American business loans. They are poorly underwritten and have minimal protections. It obviously mimics something we've been through before, back in 2000, prior to 2008. And these same loans are sold to investors who invest them in everything, including their retirement plans. These investors are about to be in some real pain. There is real reason to be concerned. President Trump isn't doing anything about this to make it better. The next president will likely take the brunt of this coming crisis. Republicans will be quick to identify a Democratic president, should they be elected, as the problem. And we saw this happen with President Obama. He took the brunt of an economic crisis that happened on the policies of his predecessor. Confirmation bias will be at an all-time high, but regardless of who is to blame, it's time for things to change. It's time for us to take action. Aside from just identifying the weather patterns, Senator Warren, as a presidential candidate, has a plan and has made it public how she wants to hold back this storm. Warren is calling for us to reduce household debt by raising wages and bringing down costs. Warren wants to start with increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, strengthening unions, ensuring that women of color get the wages they deserve, and empowering workers to elect, or at least 40% of board members at big American corporations. She also wants to monitor and reduce LCLs, leveraged corporate lending, and Trump's Financial Stability Oversight Council, or the FSOC, is basically sleeping on the job right now. The FSOC is supposed to be monitoring LCLs and meeting to discuss the risk, then announcing plans to address the problem. This isn't happening. Additionally, Warren would call for us to strengthen manufacturing. Warren has a green manufacturing plan to mobilize the industrial base by making a $2 trillion investment in green research, manufacturing, and exporting over the next 20 years. This will, in turn, increase quality jobs and help address climate change concerns. But finally, Warren proposes to limit the potential shocks to the economy by investing in critical American industries and taking the prospect of breaching the debt ceiling off the table for discussion. Additionally, a day after her essay, Warren introduced legislation that would help her forgive $640 billion of outstanding student loans. Warren is proving herself to be a candidate with a purpose and a woman with a plan. Yet when it comes to the potential economic crisis, there is one thing I didn't hear Warren address, yet still needs to be drastically reformed. That thing is political accountability, otherwise corruption. We need to hold those in power accountable for their actions or lack thereof. Senators, Democratic or Republican, need to hold their peers responsible for this chaos and the corruption that causes it. Greed and political corruption are a symptom and a cause. We need to mitigate the financial problem now. Why are non-bank lenders giving mortgages to people who have just gone bankrupt? How have we not learned from our past mistakes? Leveraged lending is back and the gambles are big. There is at least one candidate sounding the alarms, and that may be more important than any of us are yet aware. We have been in this situation before, and we have seen these symptoms before, but it's time to prepare ourselves. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll have more out soon. My name is Niall Piper, and I will talk to you later. Bye.